Welcome back to another video, guys, and in today's video we're going to be talking about my YZ250X, and this is the 2021 model. So I've had it this entire year so far, got it in about November, and as you guys can see, I've put a lot of hours on this bike. So it's been in Florida, all over the country, and we've ridden just about everything on this bike, from some hard enduro stuff and then GNCC style stuff as well, and then also motocross. So we've kind of done it all. And then just to kind of give you guys a background, I've been racing the National Enduro Series on this bike, and then I also race GNCCs on the 125. So this bike hasn't raced any GNCCs this year, but I kind of do that style of riding too, and there's been plenty of that kind of riding on this bike. So we're just gonna kind of be going over my likes, dislikes, and then also we're gonna be looking at the parts I like to run and what I think you guys should get if you get one of these bikes, and then ultimately if you guys should be riding one of these. So let's get right into this video and start looking at this bike. So the first things we're gonna talk about is the pros and the cons of this bike, and we'll start out with the stuff that I like, the pros. And first being all of the X model things that it comes with. So this bike is kind of geared more towards the woods riding, and so that means it's going to come with an 18-inch rear tire. The suspension is a little bit softer than the moto bike, and it's more suitable for off-road. And then it comes with a kickstand. The transmission is a little bit different, and then the power delivery is also a little bit different than the regular YZ model. So what that does, all it does is pretty much suit it for more cross-country style riding, and honestly I'm very pleased with it. You would think maybe that this bike with that stuff is going to be slow or anything like that, but trust me, this bike is still a good race bike. And like I said earlier, I've ridden this bike on a lot of motocross tracks too, and it does completely fine. So definitely don't need to be worried about that. I just pretty much take the kickstand off and then you're good to go. And so kind of moving on in that direction with the suspension, the YZs have amazing suspension. So I've gotten this bike in the fall last year and just took it out and started riding this thing with totally stock suspension. And you guys can tell now I do have some different suspension on it now. That's just suited for me, my weight, kind of my style of riding. But straight out of the crate, this thing has awesome suspension, and the Yamahas are known for really good suspension. Bouncing off kind of into the next thing, the reliability of this bike is awesome as well. Like, you can take this thing through anything and really don't have to do too much maintenance to it. Obviously you guys need to keep up with regular maintenance, changing the oil, air filter, keeping up with brakes, you know, top end, stuff like that. But I've gotten, man, I don't even know how long it was. There was like races back to back and then no races for a while. So I was just riding this thing. And then before I knew it, I had like 80 hours on this top end. And I know some of you guys, go ahead, bash me in the comments, but this thing is bulletproof. And these YZs, they're reliable. So that's definitely a big plus on them. And then also is they've been around forever. I know the YZX hasn't been around forever, but the YZ has. This bike has kind of been the same ever since 2006 when they got the updated suspension, and then since then the plastic has just kind of changed. And then they came out with the X model, but essentially it's close to the same bike as the YZ250. So you could swap out, you know, what I don't even know, but if you have a problem, throttle cable, boom, swap it out. If you have a problem, air filter, swap it out. You know, pipes, silencers. If you guys have an older bike, it's gonna fit this bike. So that was an awesome thing for me. I can kind of swap between even my 2006 YZ125. A lot of those things swap between it too. The frame and the motor obviously a little bit different, but a lot of the stuff is the same on these bikes. So that was awesome. Being able just to swap things in between them, or if you don't have a part the day before a race, most likely somebody around you or that's going to be at the race is going to have that part that you need, and you won't be in as big of trouble as if you rode a foreign brand that hasn't been around for very long, something like that. The last couple things that I think on this bike are amazing is just how simple the bike is. So it doesn't have too much of the electrical stuff, and there's not a lot that can really go wrong other than just regular things on a dirt bike. So you don't have a lot of moving parts on this thing, and you don't have a battery that can go dead. You just kick the bike, it starts up, and you go ride. So that's I guess can be both a positive and a negative, so we can kind of move into the negative side. So it doesn't have electric start, but with a Kickstarter you can usually get those really good starts coming if you're racing this bike, hair scrambles, dead engine starts, stuff like that. But on the other hand, if you are stuck on the side of a hill and need to start this bike, it's gonna be a tricky one. It doesn't have that handy e-start button to where you can just push the button on the handlebars, it starts right up. So we don't have that on this bike. And then I know like the KTMs and stuff, I gotta say it, I know, but they've got that counterbalancer, and those bikes don't really vibrate that much at all. I rode a Husky 300 last year, and that thing, it didn't vibrate much at all. This year back on this thing, oh boy, when I got on this thing, my hands and my feet were like asleep, and I had to definitely get used to it again. So definitely a big change coming from one bike to the other. That really covers most of my complaints about the bike. Just no electric start, and then also it rattles like no other. And then the last thing I would say is just the seat. If you look at it, it kind of has a curve to it, and you almost sit in the bike. And I would rather sit almost on top of the bike. If the seat was completely flat all the way across, it would make sitting into the corners and moving into the correct position a little bit easier, rather than just kind of that one position you're stuck in, or at least I feel like on these bikes that you get sometimes. And I think running the stock tank helps with that a little bit, but if you do put a big tank on here, it's going to move the seat up a little bit more. And you can even tell on this seat here, I've ran a big tank with this before, and so it's kind of lifted the seat up a little bit. But that's not a huge complaint. You get used to it pretty easily. Definitely though something that I would change if I designed this bike. Before we get into a lot of the parts that I run and some stuff that I'm going to recommend for you guys, there's going to be a list of links down in the description that you guys can click on, and it's going to take you to Motorsport, and you guys can buy those products there. And ultimately what that does, if you guys go through those links, it gives me a little bit of that commission, and helps me out a little bit. So I appreciate if you guys do that. Just help me out a little bit. So thank you guys, and we're going to get right into what I like to run on this bike, and what's gonna be beneficial to you guys. Now that you guys kind of know about the stock form of this bike, what I like, what I don't like, and kind of what this bike is all about, let's kind of move on to the things that are more personalized to me and what I have done to this bike to make me comfortable on the bike. So the first couple of things that you guys can see is I put a seat cover on this bike with the gripper ribs, so that way I can stay in one position when I sit down. I'm not sliding all over the seat, kind of like I was talking about earlier. I can get into the position I want to be in. And then also, I mentioned it, but I'm not running a big tank on this bike, and that is because I'm just riding the National Enduros for the most part on this bike, and I don't need the big tank to run like a 2-hour or 3-hour hair scramble like I am on my 125. And that's also something to mention. Be on the lookout. I'm going to do a similar video of like this, except on my 125. So that bike is set up for GNCCs, and I've got a little bit different setup, and obviously it's a 125, so I have a little bit different opinion on that bike versus this one. So be sure to look out for that video and give it a watch if you guys are interested in 125s. But moving on from there, we're running full wraparound handguards, and that is just because, once again, we're running enduros on this bike, so the trees are a little bit tighter than maybe some other hair scrambles or like the GNCCs. We don't really have that tight sections of trees. It's more just four-wheeler trails. So with the tight single track, I definitely want to keep my hands protected, and it's saved me in multiple scenarios, whacking trees, and then also when I do go down, my levers are going to be protected, and they're not going to get broken off because I've got the metal all the way around the handlebars. Connected to my bark busters, I have the Fast Company flex bars, and I really like these things. I think I've said it once before that these bikes should obviously come stock with flex bars just because of how much vibration they have, and then I also run some vibration inserts in the bars themselves, so that definitely helps with the vibration and just kind of that rattly feel that you get with these bikes. With the theme of the off-road stuff and being protected, we got the bark busters, and then a skid plate, and then also the rear rotor guard. So these are all made by Enduro Engineering, and just those things are going to help just protect the bike. They're not needed, but definitely going to save you in rough scenarios, rough trails, maybe that are rocky, whatever it is. It's going to save you for sure. I know just last weekend actually I've been to rotor, so definitely the rear rotor guard, it's going to help you for sure. So definitely be sure to invest in one of those, and just make sure your bike is protected for what you're going to be riding. Jumping back up here to the handlebars, I run some ODI grips, and I just do that. Honestly, I don't have a huge grip preference, but the stock ones are so stiff and the compound is so hard. I cannot stand them. They give me a whole bunch of blisters, and then if your hands do get wet, they're so slick. So definitely cannot stand that. And then moving on to suspension, we just have some TBT suspension by Terry Brumley here in Springfield, Missouri. So just a local guy that's helped me out with suspension, and just kind of got some settings for me in both the forks and the shock. And then just kind of hopping on, moving along quickly from there. We have radiator guards, also by Enduro Engineering, just kind of talking about protecting the bike. I forgot to mention that when we were talking about those, but yeah, those are what I use to protect my radiators. And then helping out with the power is going to be the gnarly pipe along with the turbine core silencer. And honestly, I wouldn't recommend the turbine core silencer. If you guys are looking into something, look more into the power core. That's going to be a little bit more of the racier pipe. In the turbine core, it actually has a spark arrestor, but I haven't got the power core yet. So definitely I would recommend the power core over the turbine core. And then as far as tires and stuff like that goes, I usually run Dunlop an MX33F on the front, and then an AT81 on the rear. And I really don't change that around too often, unless we're going to be something like sand, and then I'll put a sand tire on maybe. And then also, instead of just regular tubes, I run what's called moose bibs, and it's pretty much a foam insert that you put into the tire so you can't get a flat tire riding over rocks, roots. It's easy to get a pinch flat or something stuck up in your tube, so that just eliminates all that. You don't have to worry about it. So that's definitely saved me a lot of times. And yeah, I was running tubes there for a little while and literally would get a flat tire every single race. So put the bibs in, and it's been good ever since. One thing that you guys cannot see over here is the chain guide, and I take off the stock one. It has like that metal housing on it, and I put a plastic one on the bike. So what that does is it allows it not to bend, and the plastic is a little bit more reliable going through rocks and hanging up on stuff, and really just a better option rather than that stock one. So that's one thing that I would also recommend to you guys if you guys are going to be riding out in the woods. So there's honestly not too much that I do to this bike other than the simple little things that I've told you guys so far. The one thing that I haven't told you guys, and lastly, is going to be the kickstand. I take off the kickstand, and that's just simply because I'm racing this bike a lot of times, and Even riding it on a motor track, it can be dangerous. So if you land a jump or hit a log or something, whatever it is, even snagging your foot on it, the kickstand can come down and then just be a disaster for you, high side you, anything like that. So I just take it off so that way it's a problem that you're not gonna have. And I just do that to be safe, and that way I don't have to worry about it. But I can definitely understand where they can be helpful, but I don't run one myself. So to answer you guys' questions, should you get the YZ250X? And to sum it up, I would say, what bike, what are you looking to do? How much are you looking to spend? If you're looking to be cheaper, then maybe an orange bike, reliable, a solid, good suspension, and the parts are just solid all the way through. I would recommend this bike to a lot of people. And then if you guys are younger, coming up from maybe an 85, maybe look at the 125. So a 125 is just going to be, in my eyes, it's going to be something better to learn on, and I would keep you guys on a 125 for as long as possible. 125s are huge in my eyes, and you guys can make so much improvement riding a 125 versus just jumping straight to a 250 or 450. Definitely, I would recommend this bike if you guys have ridden for a little while. Even if you guys are a beginner, maybe someone a little bit older, maybe a little bit heavier, jumping straight onto 250 is not a bad thing. So it's really just kind of up to you, and I know that's not a clear answer, but the bike that you guys are going to be most happy about riding and feel the most comfortable on is going to be the ride bike for you. So if you guys want a two-stroke, a 250, solid, reliable, a little bit cheaper than some bikes, and something that's a little bit easier to work on, and you can find a lot of parts for, then this may be the bike for you. But I hope I helped you guys in this video, and be sure to subscribe. Let me know what you guys think down in the comments, and yeah, have a good one, guys, and we'll see you guys in the next video.